So it's now my pleasure as we transition to the next session to introduce Rady Johnson, Executive Vice President and Chief Compliance, Quality, and Risk Officer for Pfizer, and Chair of the Ethics and Business Integrity Committee of the International Pharmaceutical Manufacturers and Associations, otherwise known as the IFPMA, who will introduce the forum's next leading speaker, as well as facilitate the subsequent panel session. Rady, thank you so much for your extraordinary leadership, especially during this very important time. And I now turn the floor over to you.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and thank you, everybody. This has just been a tremendous day and a half so far forum, and it's been wonderful to be participating in it and to learn so much from it. I'm honored to be here today, and I'm especially honored to introduce our next guest. It's a true privilege to introduce Minister Wagner de Campos Rosário, Minister of the State of the Office of the Comptroller General of Brazil. We're honored to have him join this important forum and to hear from him shortly. Minister Wagner Rosário has been the Minister of the State of the Office of the Comptroller General since 2017. He began working as a federal auditor of CGU in 2009 after serving in the Brazilian Armed Forces. He's also the first civil servant of the ministry to take over the positions of Executive Secretary and Minister. In that critical role, Minister Wagner Rosário leads and advocates for the structural reforms necessary to combat corruption, leads efforts to design compliance programs, and build an ethical business environment in Brazil. Ladies and gentlemen, the Minister of State of the Office of the Comptroller General of Brazil, Wagner de Campos Rosário. Minister, thank you so much for being here. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Rady Johnson. I'm so happy to be here, and I will speak in Portuguese. I think it's better to understand what I want to speak. Bom dia a todos, é uma honra para mim.
Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here so that we can talk a little bit about integrity. I'm going to try to be more straightforward and very objective as well. On our presentation, trying to show a little bit of the work that the Brazilian government has done in promoting ethics and integrity, not only in health, but as a whole. We know that when we work with integrity, with ethics, we need to work the government as a whole. I will talk about health as well, but I think that the most important goal that we have is to be able to focus a little bit in this work that is being done on the federal government as a whole. The first thing that I say here is we see public integrity as state policy and a value and principle. And what I'm going to show in a timeline that I'm going to share is exactly how this was happening in our country. We know that one of the big problems of corruption is it's either the lack of trust, the society doesn't trust the state anymore, and this has very severe characteristics for a country. And the integrity program has this goal, promoting trust between society and state. Now, going straight to the point and starting, I would like to show a little bit of the evolution that happened on the integrity for the federal government. In 2009, we launched the program One for All and All for One, which was exactly a problem trying to use children's stories characters to be able to bring this to children that were on their first years of school, and for them to understand what is ethics. And the word integrity still wasn't present on our work, but ethics was very present, and we was trying to bring this information to children. So the first idea of integrity in the government was trying to bring this idea externally to children as a target public that can, in fact, change a society in a shorter period of time. Then in 2010, we started having the first conversations about ethics and integrity in the government. It was the pro-ethics company registration. It's also targeted towards civil society and companies. So we were betting that companies, we should recognize the companies that weren't involved in corruption, companies that were, turning their work and actually doing their social activity in the correct way, in integrous way. So that was our initial view. Then we had a lot of, the big thrust for integrity in Brazil, especially related to companies, which was Law 12846, which is our anti-corruption law. It brings the figure of accountability for legal workers for corruption cases. In the Brazilian case, here we're talking about the civil administrative part. It's not on the penal part of things. And this is the institution that I work today. CGU has a responsibility of doing this, which is the lenience accord that talks about the collaboration of these illegal workers on corruption investigation cases. In 2015, we had a significant evolution with the decree that regulated the law. And from that, we had in 2015 as well, the reformulation of the pro-ethics program. Because if we had a provision on an anti-corruption law that the companies that were, closing this lenience accord with the government and the ones that were being approved in the liability process, they would have another factor of their responsibility. They would have the implementation of integrity processes. So we adapted the pro-ethics program that was created in 2010 to the rules existing in Decree 8420 to the integrity rules. Today, we have 14 lenience accords that are signed that together have almost 15 billion reais in accords. And all companies are today supported, and they have follow-ups done by the CGU. So how are the programs evolving? How this has been working? Other than that, after 2015, we continued in this evolution with the state law in 2016. And when we had Lava Jato in Brazil, one of the biggest anti-corruption investigations seen worldwide, it brought us the view on this car wash operation and how we would implement integrity from the doorstep in. And everything that I saw that happened until 2015, if we pay attention, they were connected to integrity problems in companies, in schools. So it was all external. And the internal work, what should the government do internally? And when we started the state companies, Petrobras was one of the big focuses of corruption cases on the car wash operation. So we had Decree 8,945 that regulated the law and brought this integrated way for the state companies in Brazil. After that, considering the part in 2016, we had Port 784, which brought a program for public integrity. So we started talking about public integrity more effectively. And this was also voluntary. This was voluntary. So you want to implement integrity, you want to strengthen the government's image, do that. So I think it was a starting point with a very voluntary view, but it was an important step that the government gave on implementing integrity. In 2016, 2 organs launched their integrity programs with a lot of frailties, but they had notion of risk management, implementation of a specific integrity implementation, code of ethics. The federal government has a responsibility as well, hearing that is already ready. So this would make the program easier to implement. But 2 organs did that, CGU and the planning ministry at the time. And these were very important steps taken inside this evolution. Still in 2016, there was the first normative instruction talking about internal controls, risk management, and governance on the federal government. And this normative instruction was actually an advancement in terms of understanding and comprehension of what these were, what is risk management, and how this would be according to an integrity program. Now, continuing on our time evolution and going through as well to 2017 now, we had the recommendation of OCDE on public integrity. The recommendation, which is known by many here, is a recommendation that is structured in a work from external work as well as internal work. So this means I need to have a change of culture in society as a whole, as well as inside the government. So we know that the government is an extractive society. So there is no point trying to have an integrity program only in the government. The broad integrity view has, in a change of culture, it needs to change the culture of society as a whole. Since everyone knows this recommendation of CTE, it's focused on 3 basic pillars. There is a system, one aspect, another pillar linked to culture, and a third pillar, which is not less important, connected to accountability, right, and responsibility. So Brazil started doing this in 2017 with a little bit more strength for integrity, because it ended up incorporating these ideas from the OCDE Council. And on the same year, 2017, we started participating on the integrity network on Latin America and Caribbean, involving OCDE and IDB, and trying to get good practices and trying to have a better implementation of integrity, a better absorption of these concepts, and the vision of an attempt to operationalization. So sometimes we think a lot of theory, but when we actually go to do it, having an integrity problem being operational, we have another level of challenges and other challenges to be faced. Then in 2017, I think it's the main step of the federal government, which is Decree 9203, which different than that other program that I talked about before from 2015. This one from 2017 made it mandatory for us to implement integrity on the federal executive power. So it was a very important topic. We already had these state companies law thinking of integrity for state companies, and now we are making it mandatory for administration, direct administration for the federal government as well. After that, we had Port 1089, which was going to give guidances for these programs to be implemented in an effective way on the federal government. And we follow this evolution on our timeline here. We're going to continue following it. And we reached the practical guide for implementation. So when this became mandatory, we already brought out a practical guide towards implementation to make it easier. And everyone knows that the public administration in Brazil is very broad. We act in a very effective way, but in a country so big as Brazil, it's very difficult. It's more challenging to implement. And it's not just about one company or a small group. It's 600,000 public servers all over the country in several states and municipalities. So it's a very big challenge to make it operational. And a way to do that in an effective way is we brought the integrity panel, which was exactly opening on an open panel to the entire society so that the society could follow the topics that we started adding as essential for implementation on the integrity program. These topics were, integrity in health, code of ethics creation, a specific channel for complaints and reports. So society is trying to follow which organ is doing. This brings a lot of social pressure into it so that the managers are going to actually implement these programs. So this panel was very important. It was created in 2018, and in 2018 itself, we changed Port 1089 with deadlines, making the deadlines that we thought we should have so that we could have 100% of these integrity programs finished on these units on the federal government. So we gave new deadlines and we started trying to get those deadlines so that the problem could be effective. In the year 2019, we had a partnership with OCDE on public integrity, and we hired 2 studies. One study was dealing with the formatting of this integrity management. So what is the best way of having integrity in each organ of the public administration? But also together with that, we also searched another study applying behavioral theory inside these integrity programs. So these studies are ongoing, they're in their final phases, and they should be presented this year, which will give us an even better guide of how these programs should be structured in each one. Now reaching current days, in 2020, we started making an integrity bulletin for crisis times. We already had this pandemic and a lot of actions were implemented. So we created this bulletin to be able to post everything that was being implemented. And in December 2020, December last year, we delivered everything that we had done on the 57 ordinance, all units in the government with the integrity plans and with a management for, integrity management. Of course, these units still have to evolve. These plans need to, evolve in themselves, but we were able to at least implement in November 2020 and December, we delivered this package on the International Day Against Corruption for the Brazilian Society. Recently, we also had Law 14,133, which is the new law for billings and for bidding. And it's actually for, when we have something over 200 million reais, and it's going to have more, it's a smaller spectrum. And we also hope that with this measure, which was restricted to a very small group of contracts, that we are able to have positive results in this public-private relationship.
Moving on to the current year, we created a partnership with the OECD. We created 7 values, participated with 33 civil servants that voted for the public service, involving the civil servants in the programs of integrity. On this year, we started to evaluate all the programs of implementation, the ones that we launched last year, and we hope that till the end of next year, we will have the first assessment ready to go on all units so that they all show a standardized evaluation, and also that those organs show a higher maturity regarding implementation of those plans. We have recently also approved a system of integrity, public integrity, by the Comptroller General of the Union. So we are creating an organization of this program in the public administration. Considering the size of Brazil, there's no use creating a set of rules and not following up and monitoring, and that's what we're doing. And that's what we're doing by hiring the peer review to have the adhesion of Brazil with those recommendations of the board that date from 2017. And this is a very important step so that we can evolve regarding that aspect. So from this work, we have a lot of guidelines of implementation of programs and risk management, and this has been helping the government regarding public integrity. The Brazilian government has also adopted as a rule what is in the guidelines of the board in a very broad way. So we are working with integrity in the society, whether it's in schools or in companies, but we are also working in a very effective and strong way the implementation internally on all public administration offices with monitoring and creating a system and partnerships with the OECD to evaluate that our evolution is aligned with best practices, and also bringing the experience in Brazil, which was also developed with fighting corruption and and considering techniques of investigation and everything. So that was it. I think the world has been facing a lot of difficulty in fighting corruption. And besides fighting corruption, we have to fight that in a situation that is affecting the whole world, which is the pandemic. So I'm very sure that everything that we've been doing has a positive impact. The program of integrity creates a shift of culture that does not happen overnight, but we are sure that we are on the right path and that these actions will have an impact, a positive impact, bringing the country to where it should be among the greatest economies in the world, and not just because it's a very large economy, but because of that, we will be able to have more social justice and equality in the country. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to be here.
Thank you very, very much, Minister Rosário. It was an honor and a privilege to hear you again today, and I really admire your comments, the work that's been done so far, the commitment and the candor about the work ahead of us. So thank you again very much for your time.